I need you to sit with this sentence for a moment. I woke up to an empty bed, an empty closet, and a note that said 4 words, "I am not sorry." That was it. No explanation, no argument, no goodbye. 12 years of marriage, 1 daughter, a home we built together. And she reduced it all to 4 words written on the back of a grocery receipt. My name is Daniel, and this is the story of how my wife abandoned me, and how her own mother showed up 3 weeks later with a cardboard box, a trembling voice, and truths that would shatter everything I thought I knew. This is a story about betrayal, but not the kind you expect. This is about the lies we believe because we love, the warnings we ignore because we're afraid, and the moment when someone finally has the courage to say what everyone else was too scared to tell you. This is a true story, and it changed my life forever. Let me take you back to where it started, not to the abandonment, but to the beginning, because every tragedy has a prologue, and in mine, the prologue looked like paradise. I met Sarah in the spring of 2011. I was 28. She was 25. I was working as a project manager for a mid-sized construction company. She was a graphic designer at a boutique marketing firm downtown. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party in a rooftop bar overlooking the city. She was magnetic, that's the only word for it. When Sarah entered a room, you noticed. Not because she was loud, the opposite actually. She had this quiet intensity, like she was always observing, always processing. When she looked at you, you felt seen, really seen. I approached her that night with a terrible opening line about the view from the rooftop. She laughed, not at the joke, at me, but kindly, like she found my awkwardness endearing rather than pathetic. We talked for 3 hours. The party dissolved around us. People left. Music stopped. The bartender started stacking chairs, and we just kept talking about everything and nothing, about dreams and fears and the weird way life never turns out how you planned. By the end of the night, I just knew, this was the woman I would marry. Looking back now, I can see the first red flag. It was so small, so easy to dismiss, but it was there. When I asked about her family that night, something shifted in her eyes, just for a fraction of a second, a flicker of something, discomfort, fear. I couldn't place it then. She said, "My family is complicated. My mother and I are close. My father left when I was 12. Let's talk about something else." And we did, because that's what you do when you're falling in love. You respect boundaries, you don't push. You assume the walls will come down with time, with trust. Some walls never come down. Some walls are hiding things you're not ready to see. We dated for 2 years, beautiful years, adventures, laughter, that intoxicating early relationship energy where every moment feels electric. She was creative and passionate. She challenged me intellectually. She made me want to be better. We got engaged on a hiking trail at sunset. I had the ring in my pocket for 3 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. When I got down on one knee, she cried, real tears. And when she said yes, I believed with every fiber of my being that I was the luckiest man alive. We married in 2013. Small ceremony, 50 guests. Her mother Patricia was there, warm and gracious. She hugged me after the vows and whispered, "Take care of my daughter, please." I promised I would. I didn't understand then why her voice trembled when she said it. The first 5 years were genuinely happy. At least I thought they were. We bought a small house in the suburbs. We talked about kids. We adopted a dog named Murphy. We built routines and rituals. Sunday morning pancakes, Friday night movies, Wednesday walks in the park. Sarah threw herself into her design work. Long hours, late nights. I supported her ambition. I was proud of her drive. When she got promoted to creative director at 30, I threw her a surprise party. She seemed genuinely moved. In 2017, our daughter Emma was born, and for a while it felt like our life was complete. Sarah was a devoted mother in those early months, attentive, loving, present. But something changed after Emma's first birthday, subtle at first, then less subtle. Sarah became distant, distracted. She would be in the room with us but not really there. Her eyes would glaze over mid-conversation. She would check her phone obsessively, then say it was just work. I asked if she was okay multiple times. She always said yes, said she was just tired, said new motherhood was an adjustment, said I was being paranoid. I want you to remember that word, paranoid. She used it a lot. You're being paranoid, Daniel. Why are you so paranoid about everything? God, your paranoia is exhausting. I didn't know it then, but she was conditioning me, training me to doubt my own perceptions, to dismiss my own instincts. Every time I sensed something was wrong, she would flip it back on me, make it my flaw, my anxiety, my imagination. This is called gaslighting, and it's one of the most insidious forms of psychological abuse that exists, because it doesn't leave bruises, it doesn't leave evidence, it just slowly, methodically erodes your ability to trust yourself. By 2019, I was a shell of the confident man I'd been when we met. I second-guessed everything. I apologized constantly. I walked on eggshells in my own home, terrified of triggering her irritation. And still, I loved her. God help me, I loved her so much. The abandonment happened on March 14, 2022, a Monday. I remember because it was 3 days after Emma's 5th birthday party. We had balloons still floating in the living room, cake left over in the fridge, streamers taped to the walls. I came home from work at 6:15. The house was quiet, too quiet. Murphy didn't greet me at the door. That was strange. He always greeted me. I called out, no answer. I walked through the kitchen, normal, living room, normal, but something felt wrong. That prickling sensation at the back of your neck when your subconscious registers what your conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet. I climbed the stairs. Our bedroom door was open. The closet light was on. Her side was empty. Not messy empty, not she grabbed a few things empty. Surgical empty, cleared out. Hangers left behind, drawers open and hollow, her jewelry box gone, her toiletries removed from the bathroom. And on the bed, a single piece of paper, torn from a grocery receipt, flipped over to the blank side. 4 words written in her handwriting. I am not sorry. I stood there for what felt like hours. It was probably 5 minutes. My brain couldn't process what my eyes were seeing. This had to be a mistake, a prank, a nightmare I would wake from. I called her phone, voicemail. I called again, voicemail. And again and again. I texted, no response. I called her mother. Patricia answered on the 3rd ring. Her voice was tight, controlled, like someone trying very hard to sound calm. Daniel, I was expecting your call. Patricia, where is Sarah? What happened? Is she okay? Is Emma with her? There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice cracked. Emma is with me. She's safe. Sarah dropped her off this morning. She said she was taking a trip. She said you two needed space. Space, Patricia, she emptied half the house. There was no fight, there was no warning, she just left. Another pause, longer this time. Daniel, she stopped herself, started again. I can't explain this right now. I need some time, please just give me a few days. Keep calling me if you need to hear Emma's voice, but please give me time. And she hung up. The next 3 weeks were the darkest of my life. I functioned on autopilot, went to work, came home, sat in the empty house surrounded by evidence of a life that no longer existed. Murphy seemed depressed too. He would sit by the door waiting. Sometimes he would whimper. I called Sarah's phone daily. It eventually went to a number disconnected message. I emailed her work. Her boss said she had resigned 2 weeks before she left. 2 weeks. She had been planning this, executing a careful exit strategy while smiling at me across the dinner table. I checked our bank accounts. She had withdrawn $12,000 from our joint savings, quietly, in small increments over 6 months. I never noticed. I was devastated, confused, and increasingly I was angry. What kind of person does this? What kind of mother abandons her 5-year-old daughter without even saying goodbye? What kind of wife erases herself from a 12-year marriage with 4 words on the back of trash? I started going through her things, the stuff she left behind, old journals, letters, photographs, looking for answers, looking for anything that would make this make sense. I found nothing. It was like she had curated what remained, left only the innocuous, taken anything that might reveal who she really was. I was drowning, and I had no one to throw me a line. Then on the 21st day, my doorbell rang. It was 8 p.m. on a Thursday. I wasn't expecting anyone. I almost didn't answer. I had stopped answering the door, stopped answering most things. But something made me get up. I opened the door. Patricia stood on my porch, Sarah's mother. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 3 weeks. Her eyes were red. She was holding a cardboard box. "Daniel," she said quietly, "can I come in? There are things you need to know, things I should have told you years ago." I stepped aside, let her enter, closed the door behind her. We sat in the living room. The balloons from Emma's party had finally deflated, sagging sadly in the corner. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Finally, Patricia placed the box on the coffee table between us. "What is this?" I asked. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "This is proof of everything, of who my daughter really is. I want you to understand something first, Daniel. What I'm about to tell you, it doesn't excuse my silence. I should have warned you before you married her. I should have been braver, but she's my daughter, and I kept hopping. I kept praying. That love would change her, that you would change her, that motherhood would finally." She couldn't finish the sentence. "Patricia, please just tell me." She took a deep breath, and she began. "Sarah has always been different since childhood. It's hard to explain to someone who hasn't lived with it. On the surface, she was perfect, beautiful, charming, intelligent. Teachers loved her, friends adored her, but at home, behind closed doors." Patricia's hands were shaking. She was cold, Daniel, calculating. She could turn her emotions on and off like a switch. When she wanted something, she became whatever she needed to be to get it. And when she was done with someone, she snapped her fingers. They stopped existing to her. I sat frozen. This didn't sound like my wife, but somehow it did. When she was 16, she had a boyfriend, Tommy, sweet boy, absolutely devoted to her. They dated for 2 years. One day, with no warning, she ended it, brutally, publicly, humiliated him in front of their entire friend group. Patricia paused. Tommy tried to take his own life 3 weeks later. He survived, barely, and when I confronted Sarah about it, do you know what she said? I shook my head. She said, "That's not my problem. I never asked him to love me that much." She was 16 years old, Daniel, and she felt nothing. No guilt, no remorse, just annoyance that people were making a big deal about it. I felt sick, genuinely nauseous. The woman Patricia was describing, I had glimpses of her, fragments, moments that didn't quite fit the narrative I had constructed, but I had explained them away, rationalized them, because I loved her, because I needed to believe the story I had written about our life. "There's more," Patricia continued. "So much more. Her pattern is always the same. She finds someone, she studies them, learns what they need, what they fear, what they dream about, and she becomes that perfect person, for a while. Then she gets bored, or she finds someone better, or some internal switch flips, and she discards them completely, without warning, without empathy." She looked at me with something like pity. "You lasted longer than most, 12 years. That's the longest I've ever seen her maintain a relationship. I think Emma complicated things for her, made it harder to leave, but eventually the pattern always wins." I couldn't speak, my throat was closed, my eyes were burning. "Where is she now?" I finally managed. Patricia opened the box on the table. Inside were photographs, documents, printed emails, a burner phone. "She's in Portland with a man named Marcus. They've been together for 2 years, Daniel. She met him at a design conference. She's been living a double life. I found out 6 months ago when I saw a message on her phone. I confronted her. She denied everything at first. Then she got angry. Then she told me that if I ever said anything to you, she would make sure I never saw Emma again. She used my granddaughter as leverage to keep me silent." I spent the next 3 hours going through that box, every document, every photograph, every message. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. Hotel receipts from trips she told me were work conferences. Photos of her with Marcus, smiling, intimate, comfortable in a way that suggested deep familiarity. Emails discussing their future together. Their plans to start fresh, once she handled things on her end. I was the thing that needed handling. There were also therapy notes. Patricia had saved them from when Sarah was a teenager. A psychologist had evaluated her and written, "Patient exhibits significant traits consistent with narcissistic personality disorder, marked lack of empathy, superficial emotional responses, pattern of idealization followed by devaluation in relationships. Prognosis for meaningful behavioral change is poor without intensive, long-term intervention." Sarah had refused to continue therapy after 3 sessions. Patricia sat with me as I processed all of it. She held my hand when I started crying. She brought me water when I couldn't stop shaking. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "After all these years?" She looked at me with fierce determination. "Because you deserve the truth. Because Emma deserves a father who isn't destroyed by confusion and self-doubt. And because I am done, protecting my daughter at the expense of innocent people. Sarah is my child. I will always love her, but I don't like her, Daniel. I haven't liked her in 20 years, and watching what she did to you, watching her walk away from her own daughter like she meant nothing, I couldn't stay silent anymore. You gave her 12 years of your life. You gave her a child. You gave her unwavering loyalty, and she repaid you with cruelty and abandonment. You deserve to know it wasn't your fault. You deserve to know you weren't crazy. You deserve to know the truth so you can finally heal." The months that followed were complicated, painful, but also strangely liberating. Armed with the evidence Patricia had given me, I filed for divorce. Given Sarah's abandonment and the documentation of her affair, the proceedings went relatively smoothly. She didn't contest it. She didn't even appear. She signed the papers remotely and moved on with her life in Portland. I was granted full custody of Emma. Patricia testified on my behalf, described her daughter's history, provided the psychological evaluations, the evidence of the affair, and documentation of Sarah's calculated exit. The judge was visibly disturbed by what she heard. Sarah was ordered to pay child support. She has never paid a single dollar. There is a warrant for her arrest in our state, but she doesn't seem to care. Emma is simply erased from her mother's life, like she never existed. I won't pretend the aftermath was easy. I struggled with depression, anxiety, trust issues that manifested in every area of my life. I started therapy, something I should have done years earlier. My therapist helped me understand what I had experienced, the gaslighting, the emotional manipulation, the way Sarah had systematically undermined my perception of reality to maintain control. I learned about narcissistic abuse, about trauma bonds, about why I stayed so long despite the warning signs. I learned that it wasn't my fault, that loving someone doesn't mean you deserved what they did to you, that being manipulated by an expert manipulator doesn't make you weak or stupid, it makes you human. The hardest part was explaining things to Emma. How do you tell a 5-year-old that her mother chose to leave, that she's not coming back, that it has nothing to do with anything Emma did or didn't do. You do it carefully, with love, with professional support, and with the unwavering message that she is valued, she is wanted, and she will never be abandoned again. Emma is 8 now. She's thriving. She asks about her mother sometimes, less frequently as time passes. I answer honestly in age-appropriate ways. I don't vilify Sarah. I don't pretend she was perfect. I tell Emma that her mother is a complicated person who made choices that hurt people, and that sometimes adults struggle with things that have nothing to do with the people they leave behind. Patricia has become a permanent fixture in our lives. She comes over every weekend. She takes Emma to dance class. She helps with homework. She is the grandmother and in many ways the mother figure that Emma needs. Our relationship has transformed into something unexpected, a partnership forged in shared trauma and mutual commitment to protecting Emma. We've both had to grieve the Sarah we wished existed while accepting the reality of who she actually is. I want to leave you with some thoughts about what this experience taught me, because I believe there's value in pain when we allow it to transform us rather than destroy us. The first lesson is about trust, not trusting others but trusting yourself. For years, I ignored my instincts. I felt that something was wrong, and I let Sarah convince me I was imagining things. I let her replace my reality with her version, and the cost of that was immense. If something feels off, it probably is. Your gut is not your enemy. It's your subconscious processing information your conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet. Listen to it. Honor it, even when the people closest to you insist you're wrong. The second lesson is about the complexity of loyalty. Patricia's choice to break her silence was one of the bravest things I've ever witnessed. She loved her daughter. She didn't want to betray her, but she recognized that protecting Sarah meant participating in harm, that her silence was not neutral, it was complicity. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for someone is refuse to enable their destruction. Sometimes loyalty to truth has to trump loyalty to blood. The third lesson is about healing, real healing. It doesn't happen linearly. It doesn't happen quickly. Some days I feel completely recovered. Other days, a song or a smell or a random memory will knock me back to that empty bedroom, staring at 4 words on a receipt. But I've learned that healing isn't the absence of pain. It's the presence of meaning. It's finding purpose in the wreckage. It's using what you've learned to become someone who can help others navigate similar darkness. That's why I'm sharing this story. If you're watching this and you recognize something, if you're with someone who makes you doubt your own reality, who treats you like an option, who gives you just enough love to keep you hopping while slowly draining you of everything that makes you yourself, you deserve more. You deserve honesty. You deserve consistency. You deserve someone who shows up and stays, not because they have no other options, but because they've looked at all the options and chosen you. Sarah chose something else, and for a long time I thought that reflected my value, my worth, my lovability. It didn't, it reflected hers. Some people are incapable of receiving love, not because of anything you've done, but because of deep fractures inside themselves. You cannot fix them with more love. You cannot change them with more patience. You can only protect yourself. Protect those who depend on you, and find the courage to walk away. Or, in my case, find the courage to stand still when someone walks away from you. I named this story "My Wife Abandoned Our Home," but her mother came over and my life shifted forever. And I need you to understand what that shift was. It wasn't just about learning the truth about Sarah. It wasn't just about legal victory or custody arrangements or vindication. The shift was internal, fundamental, permanent. I went from being someone who didn't trust himself to someone who does. From someone who needed external validation to someone who knows his own worth. From someone who thought love meant tolerating anything to someone who understands that real love includes boundaries, honesty, and mutual respect. Patricia knocked on my door with a box of evidence, but what she really gave me was permission. Permission to believe my own eyes. Permission to stop making excuses. Permission to finally be angry at the right person. And in that anger I found freedom. So let me ask you, if you discovered that someone you loved had been living a lie, if someone showed up at your door with proof that your entire relationship was a performance, what would you do? Would you protect the memory of who you thought they were? Would you rage against the truth? Or would you accept it, grieve it, and use it to build something honest from the ashes? I know what I chose. And 3 years later, with my daughter laughing in the next room and Murphy finally greeting me at the door again, I know I chose right. She left 4 words on a receipt. I am not sorry. I have 4 words too. I am finally free.